since day one, we've had the great sponsor of Farrier box. And something that's really cool is, I don't know if they like read our minds or not, but this last month's box was pretty dang cool. Came with a brand new Salcedo hoof knife, some tool ruse, some buffing compound, and a cotton wheel, and basically sets you up just to go straight to trimming feet and knifing them out. So amongst some other things, and then if you guys want to get on the program, go to farrierbox.com, use code brains, and get 25% off your first month's box. Like, you won't be disappointed with all these tools that you get. So sign up, do something cool.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Forging Brains podcast. I'm your host, Riley Kirkpatrick, here with my co-host, Gavin Cooper. We are at the AFA Convention. I think this is day 3.
Yeah.
This is day 3. They just got done with the live shooting today, so all of the forging classes are over at this point, and everybody's just going to be waiting to hear how they did. We got lucky enough today to get Juan to sit down with us, and we hear a little bit about him. Juan's got his brother here with us as well, so it's kind of a cool little family event. Jose, right?
Yes,
sure. So Juan, how about you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, man?
I grew up in Longmont, Colorado. My parents came here from Mexico in the, I think, late 80s, early 90s. And then kind of my dad decided to have his family there in Longmont, like the town, and it was kind of small town at the time.
Did they just randomly pick Colorado?
He came over to California when he first came over, and then he had some cousins that were working construction over there, and one of them moved over to Denver, and he told them there was a lot of work there at the time, a lot of construction, and it's like, well, there's a lot of work over here, maybe you should come check it out. And then he liked Denver, but I think they went over there for a job close to Longmont, and he really liked it. And anybody that's been there, it's just a beautiful area, The Oak Mountains are right there. But
is it a little bit smaller town?
It was at the time. I feel like now, I don't know the population, but it just seems like in the last 10 years, it's grown so much.
Is it just on the outskirts of Denver then?
Yeah, it's like about, 40 minutes, maybe 40 minutes north of Denver.
Okay. It's probably just Denver growing. And
yeah, and then it's close to Boulder, so, and then you have CU, 20 minutes away, and then you have CSU, about 35 minutes north.
CU, that's where that famous football player coaches.
Yeah, right now. Yeah.
What's his name again?
Deion Sanders.
What's his name again?
Yeah.
Who's that?
He's not that famous.
Who's that guy?
But yeah, I just think being the colleges there, it just was growing.
Yeah.
And
so you're pretty much born and raised there.
Born and raised. I moved over in 2021. I moved up about an hour northeast. So really I'm out in the boonies, like out in the prairie.
Yeah.
I'm about half hour south of Cheyenne.
Okay.
Place to be, really.
Yeah, and it's just because it grew so much when we started looking to buy a place, and I was thinking about getting married and stuff. It just felt like around there was going to be really hard to afford much, It's kind of like, I could have had a little home, but I kind of wanted to have a shop, and we own some horses and stuff, so we headed out.
You have to commute a lot for your day-to-day
life? It sounded a lot better at the beginning, but I pretty much drive an hour.
Yeah. It's one of those it seems cheaper at first because you're like, oh well, the rent's the mortgage is cheaper in this area, like house is cheaper, but then you got to account in fuel,
that's literally
vehicle maintenance, and everything else of like an out. It's like I bet once you added all that up, it probably is the same, but you're still out of town. That's the benefit.
I thought to myself is like, either I can, because I'm stubborn, so I was like, I'm gonna still want what I want.
Yep.
Or it's like something has to give, either what you want or what you do.
Yeah.
So I was like, I want this. It's like, but I think, I don't know, because it sounds like as you go on it's different, but I thought it would be easier on my body to drive than to be shoeing. So I thought to myself, like, I'd rather be in the pickup 2 hours instead of having to do 2 more horses to pay for the difference. But
it doesn't really work.
It doesn't. Yeah, I just got a new transmission in my pickup about 2 months ago, and that kind of really, and that actually, I went to Tom's in August. to figure out that aluminum shoe. And I was talking to him about it, and I was like, I just drive far, and like, it doesn't. Sometimes you don't understand. It's like I'm driving past horses.
Yeah.
That I'm behind on to go shoe horses 40 minutes farther than where those are.
Yeah.
He's like, you just have to make adjustments for the travel. And, you think about it, it's like, well, how many horses did I shoe just to pay for that transmission? And if I would have stayed closer to home. So that's where Jose kind of comes in, because he still lives in Longmont.
Okay.
So he's kind of, I have a few barns. Just growing up there and then working for Jim in that area, that's where a lot of horses are. So I still travel there, but I'm trying to concentrate on
Getting closer.
yeah, like my big stops, and honestly, that they're just good to me and they're worth the drive.
Yeah.
And like ideally for me, like you shoe 5 dressage horses inside,
Yeah.
and then drive home.
Yep.
That's cool, But like I got tired of the driving an hour and a half. It's just hard because then you do 2 trims here, 1 trim there, and then not only did you drive the long commute in the morning, but you're driving half an hour in between stops.
Yep.
So a lot of that is Jose coming in and wanting to shoe. He's taking over some of the clients that.
And now, is there like a price difference on the horses? Like, can you get more money for the horses a little further away than you can closer to your house?
I think so. I think close to my house, I haven't really had a lot of calls, and I don't know if I've ventured out to try to get them, but I think is more like ranchers and that, and it's good, but it's hard when like that beginning of a business where you show up and you're trying to figure out like where's a good hitch rail, and like do they stay on a schedule? Is this a good horse?
Yeah.
And it's hard to let go or not prioritize the clients that are good. You're just like, yeah, I just know,
It's not wonder.
I know how it goes. Like, they know me, I know them, I know their vet, I know the trainer, I know what they do. We have a relationship.
Yep.
It sucks to drive, but it's like, then you show up. Like, I had one instance, Jose. I went over, it was like a horse close to my house. And I was like, oh, this is perfect, Well, I still shot the horses down south, so I'm there at like 5:30, 6. You show up, and there's like, it's like the donkey and the goat and the horse, and you're just like, I rather just went home at 3 after I got the group of horses done down south. So
Yep.
I try to pick, like, not leave this. Like I was told early on, like, you never know who's calling, so. I never say no. Never say you're too busy.
Yeah,
Like,
never full.
yeah, go and check it out.
Yep.
And so I try to do that. And even if it's not me, I'll have Jose or somebody check it out.
Yeah.
Because
Jose gets the donkeys and the.
yeah, and it's crazy what happens. Yeah, and I'm sure like some of the guys I work for are gonna come up. Like Jim Foy, I worked for a little bit early on, and he's like.
Jim Quick.
Jim Foy.
Foy.
Jim Foy.
Yep. He was good. I don't think anybody agrees to it, but I don't think I've worked for particular guys,
Yeah.
They're not. Jim Foy, I'm sure he'll listen to this. Like, he was great to me, but he was just like, you show up 15 minutes early or you just don't show up. And like, you wear a collared shirt to go shoe horses or you don't go.
Yeah.
Which is hard, like, this is not for everybody, but at the time I didn't know Quick yet, or well, and Foy had been on the team, and that's all I could see.
Yeah.
So he'd always say, like, you'd never know what pony turns into a barn.
Yeah.
That was his thing, and so I always stuck to me, like, Jose, he might go do a donkey or a pony, but you don't know if that girl grows up and
Or they got a
is a
friend.
good rider, and it goes from a pony to,
Dressage
yeah.
or
So,
whatever.
and I have a client that I think COVID they were struggling. They weren't struggling, but I think the boarding facilities. It was hard to board maybe during COVID because everybody had their rules.
Yep.
And I'm not sure. I haven't talked to her about it, but it seemed like right around that time, they just bought their own place, and there's 2 horses that turned into a barn full.
Yep.
You know, so I think a lot of that, every stop is good to check out. So I don't ever try to be like, no.
Yeah.
But at some point you can't go everywhere.
So how old are you, Juan?
I'm 27.
Nice, man.
Is
And
Jose younger or older?
Hey, 7 years apart. You're what, 20? Yeah, 20.
Oh, so you're
Nice.
younger.
Yeah.
Okay.
what got you into shoeing horses?
Really, my passion was riding. Like,
And what type of
initially,
riding?
reining horses.
Oh, wait.
Yeah, I think growing up, how I grew up is like, you know, you go to like the Mexican rodeos and stuff, and there's a lot of good people with horses, and there's just, I think our culture is like very traditional.
Yeah.
So
That's what I really
which
like
is,
about it.
which
It's
is
like,
good.
Yeah.
Because things don't die out.
Yep.
Like
Something we don't have.
Yeah, it's like you're close to your roots and what people did. But at the same time, like I felt like everybody around me was training horses like they were 100 years ago.
Yeah.
It doesn't evolve. It's evolved so much now. But I would go to the county fair and you just see some of the horses, or you go to the stock show. It really was a stock show, the Denver stock show. They have a freestyle reining there.
Yeah.
And we didn't venture out a lot, but actually my sixth grade teacher was like, you guys should go to the stock show. So we went to the freestyle reining, and I was like 10 or 11. And I saw a guy, Aaron Ralston, I believe it was, that had like a show on RFD TV. We showed a horse with a Hackmore bareback in the reining. And I was like, whoa, dude, that's like...
Especially coming
That's
from
cool.
like and I don't know, but I'm just like, as a guy that
Yeah.
like, grew up with horses as well, seeing like the Mexican rodeo, but it's a very almost pressured
Yeah.
deal. Very pushed. The horses are very pushed
For
into
sure,
it.
for sure.
They're always on the muscle. They're
Yep.
always in the tents. They're always in the bridle real hard.
Yep.
Or they're always in the horse. Compared to all of a sudden seeing this guy with that horse free and loose under
Yeah.
it. Like,
And that's what it was to me, is like I know my grandpa still to this day, and a lot of people that think that way, like they still think a bridle is that horse's bridle. Like in Mexico, like when you buy a horse, you bought the bit.
really?
They'll give you a bit with the horse.
Oh wow.
And,
because
and
that's
is
a-
that like a horse that's like already broke or?
Yeah, like if he's broke,
Yep.
like once he's broke, he'll be on the same bit for the
Forever.
rest of his life. So, and you look at the bits and they're big, you know, and
Like big spade bits?
maybe not spade so much, but solid bits.
Okay. Yeah.
So
All cheek bits.
yeah, and that's where, like things like that, and then you see some guy riding a 7-year-old with a Hackmore, and you're like, well, I thought like he has to be in a full-on bit by then. It was like, well, no, he doesn't. If you keep him soft. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
And so
It's a roller coaster.
yeah, and it kind of made me like really question like what I saw. Like I didn't know what was better, but I was like, I didn't know what was right, but I knew that was better.
And it's just probably a lot just different.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's like in the shoeing, like shoeing is the same thing. Like I think a lot of learning, you're like, well, I don't know what the right answer is, but I know that ain't working. Or you know, and you're like, you're whipping your horse, or you're trying to use more pressure and it's not working, and you're like, well, okay, well, that guy doesn't seem to have to do that.
Yeah.
So that was my initial passion, was reining. So I grew up riding like 4-H, and then when I was like, my dad bought me a yearling when I was 14. So I trained him, and I trained her, and I started her. You know, it's like a dual pep Doccolina bred, and I'm trying to show it in the reining. It's like, it's cow bred.
Yeah.
You know? So
Yeah.
it was like an uphill battle already. But I got into like some AQHA shows, and then eventually some NRHA shows. And with that, I started cleaning stalls on weekends to trade for board.
Yep.
And that's where I first saw more shoeing
Okay.
being there.
Since 1977, Rusty Brown has been producing jewelry that has much more meaning than just equestrian-themed jewelry. It's designed by farriers who live and breathe horses, lovingly referred to as the blue-collar jeweler because every piece is proudly made here in the United States of America by the hands of retired Marines. Stop by and visit our booth, or check us out online at rustybrownjewelry.com.
That's right, everybody. Rusty Brown Jewelry is a sponsor of Forge and Brains podcast. So now you can go to their website and use code BRAINS, 20% off. They are made in the USA, designed by Farriers that we all know, and then made by retired Marines. They're a small local business that's trying to make a big deal and have an impact in this trade that we love and know so much too. So they've got a lot of different jewelry that you can check out between bracelets, necklaces, earrings, rings. So if you have a significant other you'd like to get a gift for, go check them out and use code BRAINS. Get yourself 20% off as well.
Yeah.
So I was there. I was just cleaning stalls, and I hate cleaning stalls to this day. Like, yeah, like I hear people like, "Oh, it's therapeutic," and I'm like, "Not for me."
I did the same thing when I was in school to pay for my board. I'd clean stalls and turn horses out and bring horses in. It was like you have to turn it into a little competition of like, how fast can I bust this one out?
Something.
So just to get something through the day, dude.
I to this day, like, I tell Jose, I was raised that way. You say hi to the stall cleaner or the owner of the barn the same way.
Yep.
And everybody says that, but some people don't.
Yes. Especially other people there. It's like, but in general, the horseshoer is pretty.
Yeah. And
amicable.
I've seen places where, it's like I'm that first immigrant generation here, so you're kind of stuck in the middle. Like I can look at a guy that doesn't speak any English and I can have a conversation, and then I can look at the owner of the horse and have a conversation with them.
Yeah.
And sometimes that middle feeling makes it to where like you sometimes isolate one or the other. It's like, no, you still.
Yeah. You feel like you're bouncing between these two worlds almost a little bit.
Yeah, so.
But I bet especially in your own mind, it gets. And they're like, from the outside, I'm thinking like, man, how cool is that? That guy gets to open up both these worlds.
It's so fun, man. Like, I always had like hopes. My dad just hanged drywall, man. That's what he's done since he was like 15. And like, I would want to go work with him, but he never really taught me how to do it because he's like, in his mind, he's like, I'm not going to teach you because you don't need to do this. Yeah. You need to go do something. So in my head, I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do, but it's gonna be more than like.
It's gotta be something.
Something, yeah. And I mean, my dad, like, I'm not saying like if you're working construction, it's not something, but I knew it was like, do something more and even
something you could take pride in.
Yeah, like I'll never forget. We were at Christmas one time, and the guy that worked with my dad, they'd had a couple drinks, and I was just there. I think Jose was there, and maybe I wasn't there, but you told me. And he knew my dad well since they were young, and he's like, if there was competitions for hanging sheets, your dad win them. Yeah. And I always thought, like, how lucky are we that we get to do that? You know, like, because there's a lot of people that you don't get a belt buckle or a ribbon or a picture taken for being a freaking good framer, or, you know what I mean?
Oh, man. Yeah.
You're a bad dude laying concrete, man. Good for you. So that's why I've always took pride. Like, I thought it was just lucky that we get to do this. Like, so I always knew, like, I want to go do something that is more than just working.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's where the shoeing kind of really was raining. I went to shoeing school as like most people do, like, oh, I'm gonna make some extra money on the side, and I'm shoeing.
Exactly my
Where'd you end up going to shoeing school?
5-star horseshoeing school.
Oh, with Dusty.
Yeah, with Dusty.
Nice.
And it's 6 weeks because that's what I could swing.
Yep.
And I owe a lot to the guys down there because you're just throwing. I was just stacking hay and cleaning stalls and saved. I would buy a tool a month, so I could, because I called them. I'm like, hey, what if I buy my own tools? Can I not have to pay the whole tool kit?
Gonna get a little cheaper.
Yeah, and I was working for J.D. Downs. To go back a little bit, I was cleaning stalls at a barn. I hate cleaning stalls, but Wednesdays he would go shoe horses. So I would save the horses next to the stalls next to the shoeing area till we got there, so I wouldn't try to shoot myself cleaning stalls on the corner.
Yeah, you're like, at least I get to talk to this guy.
I would clean, and now you look at it, how annoying would it be for that guy?
I was literally just thinking that, I'm like, I wonder if that's what some of those dudes are doing when I'm at the barn. And I'm like, why are you cleaning these stalls? There's all these ones down there you could be at, dude.
So I would, like, the wheelbarrow, you know, and I've never been scared to be that guy, you know?
Yeah.
It's like,
have a conversation with somebody.
well, just, like, I'll be that fly buzzing that when you're trying to go to bed. Like,
The one that's always trying to get
yeah,
slaughtered.
you're just like, because at some point, you might not like it, but you notice it.
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
and that's what I thought, like, you know, well, you can be annoying enough. Eventually, they'll try to maybe even help you to get rid of you.
Yeah.
And I've been okay with that because at that point, at least you learn something.
Yeah.
You know, so I was just there, and looking back, he was shoeing too many horses by himself.
Yeah.
So I'd do little things like he'd finish a horse and lead it out, and I'd be, oh, I got it. I'll sweep this up. Take a break. Clean it up real quick. You know, he'd be like, thank you, you know. And I'm like, yeah, no problem, you know.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, that's appreciative too.
Yeah.
Dude.
You got a barn out
like,
for
so Wednesdays, he never had to sweep anything. You know,
Yeah.
I'd go get his water bucket or just try to be nice. And eventually he's like, you want to come help me? He's like, you can help me after school. Like, just sweep and hand tools, like what I was doing already.
Yeah, he's probably like, man, my Wednesdays are so easy.
Yeah.
He's like, I would like to make every day like this.
And he was shoeing a lot. I mean, like when I started working for JD, it was nothing to go do 10.
Yeah.
You know, and Rainers. So it was like aluminum triumphs up front and Anvil brand sliders behind.
Plates on the back.
And line them up, dude.
Yep.
So you look back and like, I felt like it wasn't a job, but for him, I think just sweeping and like having someone load stuff up and hand them.
Gave him time to
it
stretch
was
his
big.
back out.
So he's like, you want to come help me? And I was like, hell yeah, dude. So I was like, I told the guy, I was like, the guy I was working for, Gabe Garrison, I was like, I think I'm going to help him a little bit and go to shoeing school in the summer. He's like, cool. And at that point, I was like ahead on my credits. I had one full day of school, and then the other day I got off at 10:30.
Oh, in high school.
In high school.
Nice.
So I was 7. It was my senior year.
Yeah.
So I would get done the days I was at 10:30, and I would just, I mean, it got to where I was like ditching the first 2 classes to just go shoe all day.
Yeah.
And that was my initial start to horseshoeing.
Nice.
Just because it seemed more appealing than everything else.
Yeah.
So that was like 2015, and then summer of 2015, I sweated out for July and August in Oklahoma, you know, which that was a big experience in itself.
Yeah.
Because a Colorado boy never been anywhere, and then you take them and
I went to the same thing and grew up in Western Oregon, and then went to Missouri.
yeah,
It's like, what is happening?
yeah, like I've never had sweat in my eyeballs.
Yeah, it's like, why do you guys live here? What is going
First
on?
few weeks of shoeing school, it's brutal.
So that's where I went. It was just a class of 3.
Really?
Yeah, Sean Saunders is a good friend of mine, and passed away.
Yeah.
And then Jose Paredes, who worked for Border Patrol down in Texas. And we'd give him crap because we're like, your name was Jose and he worked for Border Patrol. But it was good. Sean and I were like 17, turning 18, and you know, just 18 years old, you know, never been away from home, so it's
full life.
yeah.
Eager,
And then Jose was like 28. So he was like the mom, you know, like he just
taking care of you
kept us.
guys.
Yeah.
It was really cool, man, because my experience in shoeing school was just, like, we became good friends. We didn't, like, I was saying I have to be thankful for those guys, Sean, and like, he would pitch in to help me with groceries, because we'd all buy groceries for each other. It wasn't like, this is my cereal box, that's yours.
Yeah.
We were just
That was super cool. It's small enough class, so
Yeah.
you guys could like.
Oh, and then
team
Danny Lawton. Danny was there for like the 6-month class.
Yeah.
And he was there, and he was cool too. But he didn't start with us. He was already there. He was kind of like finishing up.
Oh, okay.
That was fun, man. And then Cody, Dusty's son.
Franklin?
He was like 16, 17. He was starting, like, he went and started riding with us to shoe horses. He was working at the cone stand, and we're like, dude, you need to come shoe horses.
At the cone
Yeah,
stand.
he was working at the cone stand in Minko. And we're like, dude, what are you doing? Like, let's go
Well, especially I
trim.
bet that like helped him out of like some kids his age.
Yeah.
Were there, so he's like, yeah,
And
I'll
so-
hang out with these guys.
It's just cool time, like, to see where everybody moves on from that, you know. And
Yeah.
we're shoeing with Jerry and Mike Nail, and just so much repetition. And I have to mention, a big motivator was Andrew Wells, because when I was in shoeing school, Dusty was like, nobody makes more shoes than Andrew Wells. No, I've never had a student work harder than Andrew Wells. And I'm like, who the hell is this Andrew Wells guy? Like, you know, like, you better be 10 foot tall. Eh?
You're meet him, you're like, this poet.
But it's like, it was good because I always, when I finally met him, it was super cool because I was like, dude, you kept me out doing a lot more than I wanted to, just because I just
Without
was
even
shooting
knowing
in.
you.
Yeah, so that I
Right,
had
it's
to
super
mention
cool.
that because I think
Did you meet him in shoeing school, or was it after?
I met him when I was in shoeing school at my first shoeing contest at the Colorado Classic. And Adam Tallman, who I worked later on with, he's a super good farrier. Him and Andrew used to roll around going to WCBs and shoeing.
Yeah.
And so Adam introduced me to Andrew at that contest.
Okay.
And that first contest is like, for a little background, it's super cool. Shane Carter was a judge, and Jim Quick, Craig Trinka, Bodie, Lamar,
Yeah.
Dusty, they were all entered up in that local contest. And
Some heaters.
I remember watching Mr. Carter make shoes, and I was like, I don't know what the hell I'm looking at, but I know it's good.
Dude,
I just knew. I was like, I told my buddy, I was like, we're just too green to learn what's going on.
Yeah.
You know?
no, yeah, you're like, this clinic's gonna make sense next year, a little more.
5 years from now.
Dude, that's that's the very first clinic one of the very first clinics I went to was the Shane Carter clinic.
Yeah.
But he also moves basic enough and talks
Yeah.
enough that you're like, you can grasp onto it for that long.
And it was super cool because I kind of saw him, and then I didn't see him anywhere. Like, you didn't, you know.
Oh, he does not out and about very
Yeah,
much.
but I felt like when I saw him, I saw like Craig and Jim had like the utmost respect for him, and you know, I mean, like Craig is Craig, right?
Yeah.
And like
1 in a million.
yeah, and like and Jim and those guys, to see those guys like have so much respect for someone like that, like that's cool, you know. So I've always kept in my mind like, who you see today, there's some dude out there that they admire that might not be going right now, or you know. And like one of the instances that happened is I got to meet Alan Calvert in California. Sam Head introduced me to him, and I don't know if you know who Alan Calvert, but
Don't.
I mean, I don't quote me on this, but from what I know is like he won the Hunter shoeing at Stoneleigh, I believe, like 12 years, like in a row.
12 years in a row?
Yeah, dude.
Damn.
Like, and I remember like I came over and Sam was like, "Hey, I want you to meet somebody." He's like, "This is Mr. Alvin Calvert." He's like, "He's a legend, someone I really look up to," and I was like, "Great, you know, like, good to meet you, sir." And it was the same thing. Like Sam just had so much respect for him, you know. And it makes me think like, you hear Edward Martin and all of these guys that maybe some aren't here anymore, and some aren't in the spotlight right now.
Yep.
But they're bad dudes.
Yep.
You know, and I've always liked that because you can learn from anybody.
Yeah.
And I went shoeing horses with Dan Hausman 4 years ago, and you don't see him at a horse shoeing competition, but he's out there shoeing horses,
Well,
and
it's
he's
interesting
good.
You say that because, like, so yesterday at the marketplace, we went by and I asked Shane Carter, like, "Hey man, would you be interested in doing a podcast?"
Yeah.
And he said, "No, I don't think I'm really relevant right now." And it's like, you're always gonna be relevant, man.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
everyone's
you're
like-
Shane Carter.
Yeah, you're a
It's like-
badass.
and
like-
it is the same thing as like Shane talks about Jay with that respect.
Exactly.
yeah.
Where he's like, man,
Well,
this is
you
my
with Jim
legend.
Poor,
Yeah,
you
it's,
know. And so many people with Craig.
It's like a lot of people want to hear it. Like,
And
No, it is a
it's
trade that
cool.
you have to keep that in mind. That like people are watching,
Yeah.
and then you want to try to set good examples for everybody, like the people ahead of you set for you.
Yep.
Type deal. It is something like that.
And I think my first convention was 2017. So what's going on? 7 years?
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's crazy how, like, time flies by, man. You
Oh
know?
yeah.
2017. Would that have been like Reno then?
Or I think that was Arlington.
Or Arlington?
Yeah. So it was a year before Reno, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it was because I was second in Reno in the intermediate. I remember that. But Arlington was the last year that they had the bring your own station.
Yep.
Everybody at
Yep.
the same time.
Yep. Reno was the first year with
Yeah.
all those new setups.
Yeah, it was like Arlington. So I still got to see that, and that was a cool. That's a cool thing. Someone else that I need to thank is Chris Madrid, because just like I swept for that guy at the barn, I met him at the California Classic. So just for a quick backstory, when I went to train horses, I was training horses full time, like getting after it, for about 6 months. And I had a colt flip over and break my pelvis.
Oh shit.
Damn.
Yeah, I came back home because I couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
And JD, the guy that I initially worked with, he'd come pick me up and I'd go shoeing with him because I was in crutches and I couldn't do anything other than sit at home.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to sit at home when
got
your
you out of
mom's
the house
telling
at
you you
least.
should have went to college, you know? So I was like, yeah, I'll go shoe horses with you.
Yeah.
And that guy is one of the best friends. Like, he'd bring a stool for me, dude, and I'd sit there and watch him shoe horses just because he's a good friend.
Yeah.
Cool.
You know? And
That's huge.
This episode is brought to you by the World Championship Blacksmiths. Next up on the docket for them is the Winter Clinic in Amarillo, Texas at Wellshot. They've got a whole list of badass clinicians that are going to be there, like guys like Ian Ritchie, Jason Hill, and Paul O'Reilly doing on show jumping horses. Got Troy Wood, efficiency at the anvil, Robert Jukes, trimming feet, and then John McNerney, who is judging the next WCB in Amarillo, the first one of the 2025 season. He's going to be doing demos on the shoes and some of the classes. They got Riley Kirkpatrick, he's doing a demo as well, and Dusty Franklin. And then they'll also be doing AFA certification demo on, going through how you can, if you're working on the certified shoeing the horse. And then if you have a team and you're going to the Winter Classic, they actually do a practice go of your team on the foot there, so you can have a simulated go on what it's going to be like and have the judges judge as well. So check them out, let them know that you want to go, and we'll see you guys there.
himself, one of the most talented guys I've ever
Was
seen.
this before or after you went to shoeing school then?
After. So I went to shoeing school, and then I went to go ride horses. But the deal riding was I had to shoe too, because the trainer that I worked for shoes his own horses.
Yeah.
So I would get paid $20 a horse to knife, pull shoes, knife feet, and then 8-nail everything. So he'd drive 3 nails, and I would 5-nail them.
Oh, damn.
And I would drive the other 5 nails
Yep.
and finish. And I get $20 a horse for that. So we'd go. The most we did 50 horses in 2 days.
That's a lot.
It's a wad.
I mean, and this is just like
You're like thinking like this is a
St.
good
Croix
check.
extras,
Yeah.
St. Croix extras up front and double S, out of the box, freaking
Working.
getting them.
Cranking 'em
Yeah.
on.
We did 2 an hour. It was like the standard.
Golly.
It was about 2 an hour. It looks like, you know. But I tell you what, I got a lot of repetition fast.
Yeah, under
So
a bunch of
fast.
horses.
I mean, driving 5 nails. You're driving 5 nails on every foot, regardless, and regardless the fit.
Yep.
I learned some
Learn how to not
stuff.
stick 'em.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Exactly. Yeah.
I learned stuff without even knowing I was learning it. Like,
Yeah.
you're just like, oh, that one I'm not going to nail out very high.
Yeah.
And then you're like,
I think I'm gonna aim this one out.
I can send this one, you know?
Yeah.
And so anyway, that was a cool, and I learned so much shoeing horses. We would shoe 2 horses for lunch every day of his to keep up with the training horses.
Mhm.
So I learned a lot because I rode the horses I shot.
I was gonna say, you like, it was you downhill.
Yeah.
You were the downhill.
And that's like, I did a lot of him and he's not a professional horseshoer
Trainer.
but he's a good trainer.
Yeah.
And he's Bud Poplin, and he's super, and he's a good horseshoer, but it's not the type of horseshoeing we see.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the horses were fine.
Yeah.
They did good, and they had to do good because of their job.
Yeah.
And he depended on his job. So that's why sometimes like you hear reining plates, and people are like, well, you don't have to fit those. It's like you do have to fit them, like, but you also can't do these other things wrong. Like if you don't fit them a 10, that's all right. But if you trim them a 5, you're in big trouble.
Yeah.
So I learned that.
That makes sense, yeah.
So like he could have nailed them out of the box, but they were level.
Yep.
And they were flat. And so because if they spread or they didn't do their job, he lived off of it.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot because you see some dude just like putting them out of the box. You're like, oh, that's not a good horseshoer. And you're like, well,
Horses are performing.
the horse is pretty the fit is not good, but maybe the trim and
Yep.
you know
He's
what
set
I'm
up
saying?
nice. He's set up nice.
Yeah.
Might not be nailed up real sweet. Might not be fit real sweet, boxed up real nice, but it's horse is trim sweet. He's set up for that horse. And that guy probably understood biomechanics better than most horseshoers.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that, I always think also, it doesn't mean that there's not a cost with time.
Yep.
Like,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But it works.
Yep.
Especially when you're riding horses and they're futurity horses and like we knew if they worked or didn't. So I learned a lot just because we were shoeing. I would shoe horses with my boots and my spurs on every day.
Cowboy.
And then I would saddle them and get on.
Yeah.
And if something was not going good, who the hell were we going to look at?
Yeah.
And we did a lot of ride one, pull them off, put a little rudder,
No kidding.
get on again. Like,
Wow.
It's crazy how much you can learn
put
just
'em,
doing
like-
that little bits.
change a pair of sliders with the saddle on, and the horse still
Yep.
catching his air, and go try 'em. Because, and I learned so much of that because even with a veterinarian, so it humbled me quick, because even with a veterinarian now, right? You look at your job like everybody gets together, makes a plan, everybody goes home. Well, what if it didn't work?
Dude. And moving horses is so huge on.
Yeah.
Like our trail horses, stuff like that, really no big deal. But like when we were shooting Arabs and stuff, it was very common that we'd nail them up with 4 nails and go watch that horse run,
Correct.
make 2 laps, and we put them back in the bay and try another
And
pair
I
of
think
shoes
it's
on.
just
Like,
humbling because
Yeah.
you're just not that proud of your work anyway. Like you just clinched them and polished them, and now you got to pull them off because it's not right.
Yep.
So even though I wasn't learning how to make shoes or doing that, I learned a lot of aspects that I think helped me later on.
Yeah.
With him because of that, which I went on. I shoot reining horses, and it was like it helped me so much, and I understood a lot of riding. So my wife rides reining horses. We go to the futurity. I was talking with Mark Milster just the other night. We love talking reining horses and all that.
Yeah.
But where it went from there is when I broke my pelvis, I came back. I was riding with my buddy, and he was going to compete at the California Classic, and Chris Madrid was the judge.
Okay.
And I was on crutches still, and just watching. That's where I first met Bodie. I remember he was shooting like a little fjord horse, and he just nailed him up super cool. And I was just like, man, like, you know? And I think JD was in the intermediate, and like Chris, I remember he made a pair of 3/4 fuller shoes for a horse like no time.
Yeah.
And I think that was like the year after Calgary,
Okay.
or pretty close. I mean, they were like tuned up.
Yep.
And I told him, I was like, dude, I want to do that. So I met Chris and then that spring, I quit working for Jim Foy, and then I was like, I'm still going to learn. So I sent Money a text and a messenger. I was like, if you ever need someone to come clean your shop, let me know. And he messaged me right off the bat, and he's like, come on down.
Really?
Like in 2 weeks. And I was like, I'm going down. So
Yeah.
I went down to Money's, and it was super cool experience. And that following year, the Classic was right at the same time as Convention, right? So he was super busy with like he was flying back to shoe horses like for a week and then going to convention. He called me if I would go help him for that week. I was like, hell yeah.
Did you end up having to clean the shop for him?
Well, I think the first day I got up and like tried to make a point to sweep.
Yeah.
And like, you know, I mean, I couldn't even sleep, especially, I don't know, you guys you're somebody else's house.
Yep.
You know?
Super weird.
And one of your heroes.
Yeah, you're like, I don't want to fuck anything up.
Yeah, like you don't
Like, that dust might be really important to him right
you don't want to, like, you know, you just, my dad would always say things like, growing up, he'd just be like, don't be an inconvenience to people, you know, like, and I always thought, like, I don't want to, like, make them feel uncomfortable or.
I'm right there with you. I think many times it has made me look like a bad apprentice for a little while.
Yeah.
Because I'm like afraid. I don't want to like, oh, here, let me go shake that shoe.
Whoa.
Here, let me go nail. It's like, because I don't.
Whoa.
Don't want to step
I
in
learned
there.
from I work for Jim Quick, where like the first day I went with Quick, he's like, "Don't touch anything." I was like, "Yes, sir." Okay.
Yeah.
So you know, and it was good because I think like the way I was raised, I could work for those people.
Yeah. I actually ended up gravitating towards those people.
Yeah. So I went down to Money's, and I helped him that week, and he's like, "I'm gonna go to convention. You wanna drive?" I was like, hell yeah, you know, I ain't got nothing to do.
Yeah.
And I'd quit working with Foy at the time, so I had some time. And JD was one of those guys that he's so nice about everything. He would be like, we were nailing on aluminum Triumphs and shoeing horses, and like he looked up to like Chad a lot because I feel like there for a little bit, it felt like he couldn't compete because he was shoeing those type of horses.
Mm-hmm.
And he would be like, oh man, like Chad, like he shod some of the best reining horses and he still competes. So it kind of gave him the spark.
Chad Chance, right?
Yeah, Chad Chance. And he was like, you got to go learn from more guys. Like, you got to go meet people and forge more. So he was super encouraging. So I called JD and I was like, dude, Chris wants me to go down and help him drive to convention. Can I drive up with you? He's like, hell yeah, man, we'll go. So I flew to Albuquerque, and then I remember I got out, Chris picked me up from the airport. Well, he had horses lined up already. So we go trim one, I trim one, and he retrims it.
Yeah.
So it's very comforting. You're like, I'm supposed to be help, and I just trimmed the horse. You got to retrim the whole thing. Yeah. So I spent that week. It was like 4 days with him shoeing, you know, and mainly just I was there for moral support because I didn't really help much.
Yeah, exactly.
You got it, buddy. Keep going. Sweep up and load, and you know, money like you just. When you're shoeing, there's no BS.
Oh, dude, it was I went down there like this. I'd met him at a couple things, and I was like, it was like the first time they were going to do that team clinic for like a fundraiser at his shop.
Yep.
And he's like, man, come down beforehand, and we'll make some tools so we can auction them off. And I got there that first night, and like I got in kind of late, and he's like, well, we got to make shoes for horses tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And we we went and made some concave shoes. He'd make like one side of the horse, and I'd make the other side of the horse, and he's like, fuck, I don't even know if we can use any of these. You punch them all like, shit, dude, you know how to punch concave? And the next day shoeing horses, I was like, because we were far away from each other trimming and stuff at this place, and it was like, I came over and like asked him a question, I just didn't want to interrupt him. And he's like, bro, I know I'm cool and everything, but you can't just stand here and stare at me all day. We got stuff to do. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. He's
I'm caught on now.
Yeah. he's like so.
He's great.
Like he's one of the guys I looked up to the most. And like Jim will listen to this, and you know, a lot of people would think is Jim, and I look up to Jim a lot.
Yeah, same.
And I've learned so much about so much with Jim. I've worked with him Wednesdays.
How'd you get hooked up with Jim?
We'll go from there. I will go to a convention with Money, and you know, you're shoeing horses every day. You're in the pickup. You know, we're driving around all around Albuquerque shoeing horses, and he's like, "You ever met Jim Quick?" And I was like, "Yeah, I met him once." He's like, "You need to go work for him." And I was like, yeah, I was like, he's kind of intimidating, you know? Like, Jim doesn't take any BS either.
No.
So he's like, it doesn't matter. He's like, it doesn't matter what you have to do. Go get hooked up with him. If you want to be good, you have to be there.
Yeah.
So the place my parents rented, the owner of the place, or landlord, lives in Niwot, like a block from Jim. So he'd given me his number when I was like 15, and I rode with Jim for one day, just watching.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, go to shooting school, you know. I got to look back, and it's like, how many people think they want to be horseshoers, right?
Yep.
So I was just another kid that was like, I want to be a horseshoer.
Yep.
And Jim's like, go to school, like, go finish high school, go to shooting school, and then call me back.
Yep.
And then...
Did he remember you?
Yeah. So, well, he didn't call me back there for a little bit, but now we talk about it, and it was probably for the best, because at that point I probably would have quit school and just went shoot horses with Jim.
Yeah.
But he didn't. So then I went with JD, and then I met Jim Foy, and then I went to the winter clinic, and you know, and got to be around the WCB crowd and money. So I go to convention. I'm going to help him for convention. He tells me, you got to go for work for Jim. Well, that May, I believe, there was a Grant Moon clinic at Oleo Acres, and I went to it, and Jim was there. And he looked at me, he's like, you gonna come work for me? I said, yes, sir, I am. And then I think I still had his number, and I called him, and he's like, what day do you want to come out? And just by luck, I said Wednesday. Well, that's Harmony Sport Horses is one of his biggest clients.
Yeah.
Which it's just one barn. There's about 80 horses there. All dressage horses, really good dressage horses. So I just was luck of the draw. You know, I just said Wednesdays, and it happens to be that sweet day, and it's about an hour 45 from his shop.
This episode is brought to you by Yukon Forge. John McNerney over at Yukon Forge is stepping up his game by trying to innovate the farrier business by incorporating new tools that are either for the working man or just a hobbyist or the guy that's going and competing as well. So he's got a whole new lineup of different tools. He's got the new driving hammer, the 14-ounce Scottish-style thistle, which is actually pretty sick, so you can get that on his website now. He's got tongs, hoof knives, any size hammer that you want. 1 3/4, 2 pound, 2.5 pound, 2 1/4 pound, you name it. John McNerney at Yukon Forge has it. Go to his website, check it out, use code BRAINS, and you can get 10% off anything that you order on his website. So we appreciate John for sponsoring the show, and go check him out and get yourself some cool tools.
So I've learned a lot in that drive. Like talking about Calgary, talking about shoeing horses. We've built a lot of shoes behind the steering wheel, you know, talking about forging, talking about a lot.
What tree types there is on the side of the road.
What tree type? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Nothing pisses off Jim more than, like, driving by a herd of elk and you didn't see him first. You're just like, what's wrong with you, you know? But, so that's kind of how it worked. Like, went with money, and then I knew Jim, but I just don't think life happens for a reason. I think the timing wasn't there until it was.
Yeah.
And I looked up to Chris because I watched him competing. I saw that.
Well, he's not as far away from your age.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and I was like,
I could be here.
Yeah.
A bit.
And he encouraged me to go with Jim. And because Jim's I just was like, I don't know if he's going to like me. I don't know if I'm going to like him. My Jim was good. Jim Foy was good to work for, but he was hard. It was like when you work for someone that's picky and hard, it's hard to know if that's sustainable, you know. And so, and where like JD was super chill, and Adam Tomlin was super chill. I'm like, man, I don't know if I want to work for a guy that seems like he's hard, like, and he really wasn't. I found out like and then you would hear stories, right? Well, nobody works for Jim Quick, like. Only certain guys have worked with Jim Quick, and I'm sure. But, like, looking back is just people are people, you know? So, and timing works out, and for some people it does, and for some people it doesn't. I got along, and we got along good, and we built a relationship too. And I think because of that kid I wasn't scared to be that fly on the wall.
Yeah.
I was like, well, like if I annoy him and he like fires me, at least I'll get as much learning as I can until he fires
I
me.
wrote it to the end.
You know?
Yeah.
So that was my mentality, and then I found out like,
I think Jim's almost that type of guy, though, a little bit, that he's going to kind of kick you a little bit of crap, see if you're going to stay around.
oh, for sure. That's how he teaches. You
Yeah.
know, like
See if you actually want it.
I remember like not very far into it, I worked for a lot of guys and I'd never shaped a shoe. Right? Just
Yep.
finish. And he's like, shape a shoe for that hind foot. And I was like, I mean, it's like a
Pressure's on now.
it's like $250,000 horse.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, well, you know. And he just goes in the office and sits down.
How many heats did it take you to shape that
Oh,
foot?
I don't know. Actually, I remember the first
Quick
one.
took a nap.
Yeah. No, actually, the first one, it was like, I did all right. The first foot, you know.
Yeah.
And I was super excited because I was like, I'm gonna work for Jim. I'm gonna learn how to quarter clip.
Yeah.
Because none of the guys I worked for clipped.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm gonna quarter clip. So the first one, I kind of snuck by, and I was like, I'm in.
Yeah.
He's like, shape the other one. And that's when it fell apart. And that's where I learned, like, you can get lucky once, but you can't consistently get lucky.
Yeah. The consistency is a whole nother.
And that's
another
how Jim,
beast.
like, he just, like, I think he's done the same to Jose, where he's like, shape that shoe, and then he'll kind of let you fall a little bit. And I think it's a lot of that old school mentality, like, we're going to knock your ego down a little bit, so
Yep.
then you're receptive to the help.
Yeah, it's like, oh man, the military's been doing that for a long time.
Yeah.
There's a reason they call them jarheads. They're going to empty you out and bring back up everything they want.
And that's
It's not a bad way of training.
no, if you can take to it,
Yes.
yeah. And
Yeah,
I
you're
think
that mentality, you can have it.
yeah, and I think I was lucky that when I was in shoeing school, Dusty was in the WCB team, so he would show up and practice about 4:30 every morning, and you were welcome to come out if you wanted to. You weren't required as a student. But I saw the competition early on, and it just seemed so cool.
Yeah.
That the fact that Money had just won the convention the year before, I think like 2015.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that Money is telling me to go work for Jim, he's kind of like, just suck it up. Because
Yep.
you're going to go work for someone that's good.
Yeah.
And I just had that mentality like, man, if I want to be on the team one day or do some of the things, it's going to suck.
Yeah.
And it didn't suck as much as you initially think.
No, yeah.
But it was like, so like Jim, my dad helped me a lot because the way my dad is just very non-confrontational, don't be an inconvenience. You know, like if you drive into Jim's shop and you run over his hose, you're already on the bad side.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and the way Jim was raised was like, you don't put a shovel outside because the sun is going to dry the handle out.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and my dad was like, when my dad shows up, he stands by the door and he watches. Like my dad's like, always watch. You know, like nobody has his shoes on in the house. You should probably take your shoes off. And I just did a lot of that with Jim. I would just show up and it'd be like, and then he's like, "You want to make a shoe?" Yes, sir.
Yep.
Do you want to? But I wasn't one to like go snoop around the shop and check
Yeah.
it out. Like I'd show up and I'd stand right next to him and pick up with my apron, like I'm just waiting here. You know,
Yeah.
I'm just.
Yeah.
The
No,
puppy
yeah, that's a
dog,
good
just
way to,
throw it.
And if you don't do any wrong, like sometimes if you don't do anything, you don't do wrong.
Yeah.
I did a lot of that, you know. And then I think he saw that. He saw that, and he's like, "All right, well, now you can do a little more." And it started building, you know, from there. But I've always tried to. Now I think it's different because I still help him every other Wednesday.
Nice.
And I mean, we're going on like 7 years or something.
Yeah.
So I think it's different now. I probably irritate him more now than I did when I started because I feel more comfortable around him.
Right.
But for a long time, I was like, if I can get to where Jim tells me I don't come over enough, I'm doing good.
Yep.
But the day that Jim's kind of like fed up with me,
Hey, don't worry about next
is
week.
one day. So I've always tried to do that, you know, like
Yep.
go to guys' places, but kind of like if you go to a guy's place and you show up to his house and like you know how you forge every day, even if somebody stops by and has a conversation with you, it just throws you off.
Oh man, completely.
So
Yeah.
I've always thought like it's already hard enough to be able to go to those places. If they want you back, you're doing good.
Yep.
So I always try to do that, you know, like probably for clients too. Like if you show up to a barn and they're like, that's a cool guy. I
Yeah.
wouldn't mind if he shows up and shoes horses here.
Yeah.
I just do the same thing with working for Jam and for everyone. Like keep the doors open, especially when you need them. Like I would see what my goals were, and he'd be like, "You want to come practice and stuff?" I'd be like, "No, I think I'm good for now," because I knew like the convention was coming up in 6 months, and there was gonna be quite a few days I was gonna need to be in there.
Yeah.
And I would like in my head, I would like save them up. I'm
So
like,
you would like take the time and go put in the practice by yourself
yeah.
instead of like wasting the time of just like the piddly figuring things out before.
Yeah, like I would be like the first year it was Chattanooga actually, I think. No, it was Tulsa. I went into the open. It was a roadster class.
Yep.
I never really made a roadster. I was like, I got to figure out how to make a roadster. So about October, it was I think March maybe the convention, maybe September. I was like, all right, boss. I said I need to learn how to make a roadster. I said I'll trade work or I'll do whatever. And I've traded a lot of I traded a lot of work for tongs and punches, and you know people think like you know I'm Quick's kid, like he just gave me like I just show up
Yeah,
and grab
I
a
don't
pair
think
of
that's in
tongs.
Quick's in Jim's
Yeah, so I would be
roster.
like, I'll trade a day of work if you show me how to make something, you know. And a lot of times it didn't come to that, but I think he always appreciated that I was always willing.
Well, not even just willing. You weren't putting him on the stop like, oh, you have to show
No.
me these things.
Yeah.
Like you respected his time enough that you were like, let me trade you time, your time for my time, like type deal. So I bet that carried a lot.
And
of
I
water
just
for him.
like I just think failure is expensive, you know. And
It's tuition.
and I get like I tell like my brother and any young guy like going to convention is expensive.
Yeah.
The hotel for the week is expensive.
Yep.
Being here away from your family is expensive.
Yep.
To be 21st sucks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I always thought like if you can trade a day of trimming horses to have that guy push you a little bit more to qualify 20th, phew.
It's a big help.
You know what I
Big
mean?
motivator.
Yeah,
you go
really.
home and you're like, I just spent some couple thousand and I feel accomplished because
Yep.
I made the shoe.
It wasn't a waste.
And that's what I thought to myself, like, whatever, I can trade this, but I don't want to show up and not accomplish what I want to accomplish. So I would start, like he showed me how to make roadsters, and it was like a couple week deal because he would cut 15 pieces and I just bumped 15 of them. And I made them in steps.
Yeah.
So it took some days. Like I think it was like a week, and I made 15 roadsters, but like 15 parts at a time. I
Yep.
mean, so
the least fun way to do it.
yeah.
It really is. Like but it's the best
And
way.
like I learned that, but then I didn't go into a shop until like January.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So I took like, cause I'm like,
You chewed on it for a while.
yeah,
Oh.
he showed me how to make a wedge, and he showed me how to make a heel cock, and he showed me that 15 times. Like, he went through it with me because I made all of those at his shop.
Yeah.
And then after that, I was like, he told me, he's like, I think it was Dave Duckett maybe, or somebody was like, had told him, you just have to make a 50-gallon barrel full of them now.
I've heard that before.
And,
too,
and that's why I was like, he would just tell me every week, how's the barrel coming? Oh, it's coming along. Yeah. And that's in my mindset. I was like, well, I'm not going to show up until I get my barrel done.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I think everybody appreciates that when you have someone, you show them something and then they go make one shoe and they come back and they're like, what do you think? It's
Yeah,
like,
it's
well,
frustrating.
it looks like you made one.
Yep. Yep. It's almost an insult on your time. And it's like, I do think Jim Quick's a guy that values his own time
Yeah.
as much as other people. So I bet that was a huge thing to him. It was like, wow, this kid didn't want to
trying.
waste my time. And the biggest compliment anybody can give you is like, if you can show them something and they come back and like have builds on it,
Yeah.
you're like,
But,
Yeah.
And
wow,
I think
huge,
like
huge thank you.
the numbers always makes you. I think guys like that, like if you made 50 shoes and you showed Craig or you showed Shane Carter or you showed Jim and it's still like a bad shoe, I think they respect the 50 shoes. You know, but if you have the exact same shoes and you hand it to them only making one, they're kind of like, well,
Man, if I got guys that like it'll happen in the messages. These guys will send me every shoe, and it's like you gotta quit sending these to me.
but
You need to just hide for a bit and do this.
it goes back to what we were saying. Now you're gonna, if you get a message from them, now you're hesitant.
I don't answer them.
And that's
Very
what
honestly,
and that's what I try to never do.
Yep.
Is like if a guy doesn't want to look at your stuff, or you wear
You wore
out
out
the
your
welcome,
you wore out the welcome.
you're done. You know, and that's why I always
It's a bad taste now.
yeah, and that's
mouth.
what I've always thought. Like you want to be one. It's like trimming a foot. Like you can always do a little more, but if you do too much,
Yep.
game over. So if you wear out to where someone's like, all right, here comes Juan again, like.
Yep.
For the 50th time, dude, quit racking your shit or something like that.
Yeah.
At some point, I think they just get like, whatever.
It's pointless.
And so there's the same thing, you know. If don't wear out your, and that's what I would say. Anybody that's starting out, like if you make your pile, and you, because I do think I'm not saying you can't be self-taught because you do have to learn.
Oh yeah.
But if you're looking for answers, I do think you'll stumble upon some answers
Yep.
sooner, instead of, why did my clip go left? Well, pull 50 more clips and one of them will go right.
Yeah,
when
yeah.
it goes right, figure out why that one went right and why that one went
The
left.
light bulb might hit.
And
like,
pull one more.
Yep.
Now, I think getting help cuts all that rep, right? Like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
went to Tom's.
Different point of view.
I went to Tom's to go make the aluminum shoe because I knew, like, I'm probably going to have to make a lot of them to figure out some of the information I can get quick.
Yep.
So I do think there's a point where you're like, well, I'm going to go call Troy Wood or I'm going to call someone because he already did some of that research.
Yep.
But doesn't, you know, and then you're going to put your effort, especially when you have timelines.
Yeah.
But, you know, like, don't be too proud to do that because I think it happens shoeing too. Like, I've had horses where I had troubles early on and I had to call Jim or call someone to go help me with a horse. I think it's the same thing. It's like, dude, I don't know this shoe, help me out. But eventually the pile has to get made.
Yep. Yeah, you got to do that work on your own.
Yeah.
And so do you think there's a time in there, because when do you think your self-confidence started rolling? Is it something, it's been cool. I feel like I've known you pretty much your whole
For sure.
competition world. We've
Yeah.
been like in the same group of friends
For
and
sure.
around each other the whole entire time. And so it's been something like, it's been so cool to watch. You've been so humble through like your whole entire
thanks.
going. And so
Thank
it's
you.
been like, it's cool, but it's like probably the past, like for me on the outside looking, it's like the past 3 years, 4 years, like I've watched your confidence just like you're so sure about what you're gonna do.
Yeah.
And like, so what do you think clicked for you?
I think a couple things. I think I remember being 20, and I was in Wellington, Florida, and I went to shoe some horses with Bob Pethick, Ty Gardner, and Dan Hausman. And Dan Hausman had a couple of his horses at his place, and he's, you know, popped open a Miller Lite about 6 o'clock after we shot horses all day, and he's like, "You want to shoe that horse for me?" I said, "Yes, sir." I was like, he just sat in the picnic table and watched me shoe a full set. And Dan Hausman watching. And he looked at me, he's like, "I'd be tickled if I could shoe a horse like that when I was 20. And I always remember that. And I was like, it wasn't a very good job. You know, like it was just an everyday.
Yeah.
And that gave me some confidence shoeing every day. I was like, dude,
on the right track.
I just shot a horse for Dan Hausman in Wellington, Florida. They're shoeing good horses for good money.
Yep.
And he said it was all right.
And he was,
I
he's
can
happy
go
with
shoe
it.
for the public and not pee my pants, you know?
Yeah.
So that gave me some confidence shoeing. And I think where I'm going from there is I felt like when I first came in, I was improving a lot forging because I didn't have a lot of work or repetition, and I was just in the shop, and I was
Yeah,
just
it's easier to just
cranking
go home and
them
build
out.
shoes and not have a clientele book.
Yeah,
Horses,
yeah. You'd go and you'd have like, when I was helping the guys, like, there were big days, but then I mean I was single. I was kind of I felt like I'd quit on the reining after my injury, so I didn't ride a horse. I didn't do any of that. I was just shoeing. So I mean Saturdays and Sundays and mornings and afternoons. And one of JD's clients let me have a station at their barn, and that was a big help. So it was like, and they had no kids, so I would just show up at 5 a.m. and show up till 10 o'clock at night and just make shoes. Like Jim always says, he's like, it was just fun. So I improved a lot foraging, and then I got to where I was being kind of like there was one WCB in the Cat 1. I won the Cat 1 because I could have not shot a foot and still won.
Oh, damn.
I was that far ahead I was second in the match play. Like, I did good.
Yeah, you had him whipped.
And when it came time to
And actually, ironically, Travis Smith was the judge. And like the shoeing just sucked. You know, like
that was in Connecticut.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I just didn't do good in the shoeing, and it just bothered me. I was like, hey, I'm gonna turn into one of these guys like they can't shoot.
Like, I want to be a hammerhead.
You know, like, and like I'd work for so many guys that weren't hammerheads, and it was all about the horse, and like Jim Quick and these guys like pride themselves. I just shoot horses with Bob Pethick, like horseshoers.
Yep.
And I'm just a forge dude. Like I can forge. And Andrew Nielsen struck for me in one of those classes. He's like, "You're a good shoemaker," and I was like, "Oh."
Like I want to be a horse.
You know what I mean?
I don't want to be a farrier.
Like, and it's cool. Like it was a compliment, but in my head I'm like, dude, I need to be a horseshoer, you know?
Yeah.
So I think I had some confidence forging, but I would always choke, like in the shoeing.
Yeah.
And I looking back, I think, like Jessica Melvin was in Cat 1 there. I mean, great horseshoer.
Yep.
You know, and there's just a lot of good.
Caleb Sward.
Yeah, Caleb Sward,
like,
Dylan Crane.
Yep.
Dylan and I were coming up, you know, Mackenzie Lawson.
I think me and Andrew were both Cat 2s at that time.
Yeah, like it was. I mean, it's always stacked, but when you're in that moment, it feels super stacked. You know, you're like, oh, like if you win Cat 1, dude, you're bad, dude.
I try to remember that too. Like when we're at the contest, like to each person in here, this is the biggest thing, and they're like,
oh yeah,
well,
it's huge.
And you look at mine, like Dylan Crane, like.
And he is who he is now.
You know? And it's like, I was in the intermediate with him in Michigan, and we were fighting it out since then. And I'm sure, like,
I've said it many times on here. He whooped my ass
so
many times.
and like, it was like you couldn't dodge anybody. Like, it's just who it was. Dylan was around, like, you know, Jessica Melvin, such a good horseshoer.
Yeah.
You know, like, to where, like, they just whip your ass in the trimming.
Yep.
Mackenzie whip your ass in the trimming. You know, to where it was like, man, I'm a bad horseshoer. Like I can make shoes decent, but I think I was younger and I hadn't shot enough horses on my own to where like the shoeing had caught up. I think when the year I made the team, I think was the turning point for me.
Okay. Yeah.
I went to the first team trials, and I was like, I won my first open division in COVID year, 2020.
So the first time you made the team was the first year that they went to the team trials format and not necessarily selecting the team.
Just convention.
The Chattanooga, which was the year before it went to the trials, Sawyer made the team, and then I think Caleb was alternate, and then I was one out. So I remember it was right here. I was like, I was on my way to make the team, and I came up short because I didn't put in the time to figure out the specialty forging shoes. The double points and the specialty forging killed me. So I didn't make the team that year. And then COVID happened, and then I went to Kremling, our local contest, and I won the open there.
Yeah, I think you beat me by one spot here in Chattanooga that year.
Really?
Yeah.
It was, in all those years, like Tyson Clark, and you know, it was so. Like to make the top 20, I know like a year before that in Tulsa, Caleb Soar, Andrew Nielsen, and I are like poopy pants because we're 21, 22, and 23.
That's all. We went paintballing.
Yeah, it's like,
We went paintballing. Yeah, because like we're like none of us fucking made it shoe in. It's like what
you're just a little funeral there.
Yeah, it was.
But the year, so COVID happened, and I'd practiced a lot. Tom Turner, I have to mention his name because he's a horseshoer in Colorado, and he owns some horses, and he would always, ever since the beginning, he would always let me come to have practice goes.
Nice.
And the reason I did that is because I passed my journeyman, and I was so embarrassed with my job, and it passed. It passed, but I went up to him and I'm like, "Can I come reshoe your horse at your house?" He's like, "You can come do whatever you want."
Yeah.
So I went COVID year. I went to Tom's. I just had a lot of shoeing goes. I was like, I'm just gonna have shoeing goes until it becomes comfortable.
Yeah.
It didn't really, but I stumbled upon a win in the Open, and Dusty was entered in that contest, and I beat him in the shoeing.
Yeah, the guy who taught you.
And I was like, that was like a little confidence builder,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
because I was like, I won 2 of the forging classes, and I was second in the 3rd forging class, and Jim and I won the draft. Like, I won the fun forging with Jose. That was the first time we competed together, and then I was like, I'm not gonna do good in the shoeing. Like, I was like, I better not choke in the shoeing. And my dad and my mom went up to watch me that year, and I was like, there's just no way I choke in the shoeing.
Yeah.
And I did choke. Like, and it was like a huge confidence builder. I was like, all right, I might be onto something. It was.
I might be a horseshoer.
It wasn't very long lasting because it was a good solid go, but that next year in the trials when it's bigger stakes and more feet, 4 feet instead of 1, you see where the holes come in, you know? And Nigel was judging and Bodie, and I was just kind of like, I just didn't do good, and I was kind of bummed, and I was trying to buy a house that year, and I remember Bodie's like, I was kind of trying to give him like, well, I just haven't, been practicing it, and he's like, you can do both, you just can't be weak-hearted about it. And I was like, all right, I better get it on.
Yeah.
So then I went down to Money's before Edgewood. I was a Cat 2, and I went down to Money's, and I was just talking to him. I'm like, dude, I just can't freaking get it, And then my forging kind of started going downhill because I was trying to. I get into shoeing. You have the specimen. I'd been to a couple of shoeings where like I would do good in the specimen and the foot would suck.
Yeah.
So then I turned into the specimen. I had that mentality for a while, but the foot never got better. It was just, now it was like the whole thing was
No, everything's
a train wreck. So I was to Money, and he was telling me how Jim Keith had told him how he would practice, he would make shoes for his horses, and then he would practice if he could. That was the first thing he did. He's like, you just don't nail on
You practice shoes.
horseshoes.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
He's like, well, I was like, well, I kind of shoe Rainers, and he's like, well, you can't make one? Like, you can't make the appropriate section for the horse you're shoeing? Then that's the problem.
Yeah.
So, and the journeyman shoes, he was like, do you know all your journeyman shoes? Like, some. He's like, some of them I just don't know if I punch them as good. And he's like, well, if you can't nail them on, that's a problem.
Yeah.
So that was a big switch. And to practice for Edgewood, I was like, I just made shoes for my horses. I was like, it was that Italian Hind was there because Nigel was judging.
Yep.
It was kind of complicated shoes.
Yeah.
And I was just like, F it, I'm just going to make shoes for my horses like Money did. And I think I was like 9th in the shoeing.
Big step up.
And then that's kind of when I was like, all right.
Yep.
There's some to that.
Yep.
And then that carried over to the team trials, and Ben Mangan and Ozzy were judging, and I was closing on the house like right about the team trials. So your phone's ringing and they're calling you from the bank and you're talking to the inspector, and it was just hectic, and I'm shoeing a lot. I'm not making a lot of specimens. But I said, if I just make shoes for my... Oh, and I remember I didn't have a grinder. My grinder broke, my old grinder. So I'm just like...
Hot rasping everything.
Hot rasping or making them at the shop and nailing them on. And it was like So I go, like that's like the last 6 weeks before going to the trials, and then I go and I win the trials.
Damn.
And then like the first class, like I was just like, we shod horses until we had to go to Oklahoma, and we just drove. It was one of those, you're just like, just getting there was good enough.
Yeah.
And then I show up and I win the first class, and I was like,
Got it.
oh man, okay. So
I can do this.
I started getting some confidence on like there's like a formula, like, you know, making shoes for horses and keeping your eyes sharp about offset and what to cut and things equals doing better there. You know, so I won the trials, and then that was like that put me back in like as a contender. And then,
which it's so funny just to think though, like that you're like, you were really worried that your shoemaking was good, your trimming wasn't there, where like in reality it was still your shoemaking.
Yeah, well,
it was just that you didn't have a lot of practical application.
And I was chasing my tail, like Lamar. There's so many stories. I'm sure this podcast is already longer than it needs to be, but Lamar, where was it? Tulsa, I think. He judged a Utah contest, and I was just going everywhere, you know, and I won the specimen, and I had the best trim.
Good man.
And I didn't place in the shoes.
Oh shit! That's not what I was expecting you to say.
All right, yeah, my trims.
Yeah, I won the Roadster, and like Jacob Manning was there, and I think like Travis Swenson was there. Like, good guys, you know, like they were going for the team and stuff. And I was like a 9.2 on the trim or something, you know, and like if Lamar likes your trim, that's a compliment in itself.
Huge.
And I was like, it just went horrible. Like I just couldn't fit. Like, and I was making a lot of shoes, but I wasn't making that shoe for that foot.
Yeah.
I was just making a shoe. And so then that kind of came and went, and I was, you know, we went to Tulsa, and it just so happened that we were in the room right next to each other. So we're walking up the elevators. He was judging that year, I think. And we saw each other there going to the room. And he's like, come here, I need to talk to you. So I went into his hotel room, and he's like, don't ever do that again. And I was like, what's that? Anybody knows Lamar, he's a few words.
Yep.
Anyway, he's like, don't ever show me a foot like that. You trim it like that, and you turn in a shoe that looks like that. He's like, you can trim. He's like, but don't ever do that again. He's like, you need to make that shoe for that foot.
Yep.
Quit. And he kind of slapped me across the head a little bit and was like, dude, you trim good, but you kind of shot yourself in the foot.
You didn't compliment it afterwards.
And so that was before the team trial year.
Okay.
So I already was trying to work through that.
Yep.
And then that team trial year, that year I made the team, it kind of was building. Then I qualified like 5th in the shoeing. And then I get Mark Milster to strike for me. And I think I was 5th in the shoeing, and Mark really liked my job. And I think those were like, those little things were like little milestones that I was like, well, Mark Milster is no chump.
Yeah.
Like, if he says you did a good job, maybe you could do a good job. And then I got on the team. And you get guys like Daniel, you know, and guys so handy like Sawyer.
Yeah.
That and I was with Brian. Everybody's willing to learn, and Daniel doesn't pull no punches, and he's gonna tell you how it is, and we're gonna figure it out. And Travis Smith was our manager, and he's retrimming feet that you didn't do right, and we're going to Ben Mangan's. That really, I think the repetition and until that point, it was like life or death. Every shoeing go was like you're fighting for your life.
Yeah.
And then they got to where you're on the team, and it's nothing to go shoot 3 horses. And we were like a 3 rookie team. Like Daniel was the one with the experience, and then Brian Buckner, Sawyer, and I. Sawyer had been on the team a couple years, but he'd never been to Stoneleigh. We were just rookies. So in Daniel's mind, we're like, we just got to shoot as many horses as we can, and we got to practice as much. I think I've built some confidence seeing that you're going to have good goes, you're going to have bad goes.
Yeah.
But like Andrew Wells said it one time, he's like, sometimes you fit, sometimes you don't, but you always finish. He said that one time. I think he was joking, you know, he was just, but I always thought to myself, like, there's days where you're on, There's days you're not as on, but you still have to get as many points as you can in that go.
Yep.
And like today, that's what happened to me today. Like, I didn't have a great go, but I think like if it was the team trials, I didn't die.
Yeah.
If we had to run it back 3 more times, maybe I could improve. But before it was like I was a one-shot wonder. If I had that one good foot and that shape that I put in it, and everything clicked,
It would go good.
but anything less of that was a catastrophe. It was just, you know? So now I think I just learned like you're gonna have some good go. Not every go is gonna be a winning go.
Yeah.
That's what I learned.
It's not always be a cracker.
And I learned like it's not like every horse you shoe is a perfect one anyway.
Nope.
So
No,
just do the best you can. Yeah.
Let's talk about the greatest horseshoeing supply house in the world, Wellshod. Next up, they're actually hosting the Winter Clinic for the WCB in February. So they're located in Amarillo, Texas. And, you know, it says a lot about who they are and what they support by, you know, allowing us all to come there and, you know, basically just tear up the whole Wellshod building. So they pretty much have every tool that you can imagine or every supply that you can imagine that you need to, you know, use in your business. Just go onto their website, www.wellshod.com, and they got everything you can need, any tool, supply, and also the $10 flat rate shipping. So can't get much better than that. If you use code BRAINS at checkout, they'll send you a little surprise gift in there as well. So support those who support you. I think that says a lot about the companies that have supported Forging Brains and been a part with us. Is, you know, they're invested in you guys as well. So help them survive by supporting them and, you know, purchasing the things they have to offer. So thank you guys. So a question that we like to ask our guest, Juan, we call it the Mount Rushmore. So it's basically 4 people that you hold in a high regard that have helped you get to where you're at right now, and, you know, you place a high value on that person themselves.
For sure. I should have thought about this a little more before. I think if it's, I think number 1 would have to be my dad. If it's not Farrier's.
Yeah,
It's anybody, man.
Just because I really have had it good.
Yeah.
You know, my life has been so much better. And
Great role model for you.
Yeah, just, you know, he's back home taking care of all the horses, and he's always been that dude, like selfless, you know.
Yeah, he's there to lift you up.
He's okay
Sounds like it,
staying
man.
home and doing all the chores and doing everything while his kids go have fun. And I think as I grow older, I realize a lot of us, I think especially yourself, now being a father, I'm not a father, but I think you find out if you do that in your life, like you're just doing what you can do for your kids to be happy, you're doing pretty good.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's what I've always appreciated about
It turns
him.
into the new project.
Yeah, like I think you have all these dreams and ambitions and you want to be the man, and you look down, like I always tell Jose, like you stop at the gas station in the morning, you see all these blue collar dudes get out and get a Red Bull and a donut. There's a lot of good men there.
Yeah.
And they're doing good.
Yep.
And that's, to me, my dad be number 1, just because he might not be in the spotlight, might not done as much in his life as I think
He lifted you up.
he
into
did.
it.
But I try to carry his name for that.
It's
you know?
awesome, man.
So he's number 1 for me. Number 2, I think would have to be Chris Madrid, just because, and they're not in order. I'm just going. My dad would be number 1. But Money, just because I look up to him so much, like to see his name up there and see my name on the same go.
Sounds like he kind of got you on
man,
this road,
dude.
too.
It's like, you know, I don't know, it'd be like Kobe and Jordan, like getting to play with each other.
Yeah, no, it's someone you
It's
looked
just
up to
cool.
so much.
And I respect everybody. Like Sawyer and I are good friends, but like we were wanting to make the team when we became friends.
Yeah.
Chris was already at the top.
Yep.
You know, he was the man. Tom as well. I would say Jim Quick for sure. You know, nobody's taught me more about how to build a business and you know, and everybody can say what they can say, but even if the cards are to your favor, you still got to play your hand.
Yep.
And I think Jim's played his hand pretty good.
Aye.
And I think I've learned that from him. And I've had to learn that, like, you might not have pocket aces, but hey, they don't know if you're bluffing, so might as well play your hand as good as you can. So he's taught me that. I would say, so that's 3.
Yeah.
I would say Lamar Weaver, and man, I'd have
You
to.
can always do more too.
Yeah, like I need to say Lamar Weaver because I went shoeing horses with him, and I've never seen so many horses shod so well. Like, we went to shoe horses with Bob Pethick, and Lamar trimmed all the feet.
Oh damn!
And like that's when you know,
Yeah.
he's the guy.
He's the one.
Yeah, like, it's Bob Pethick, Lamar Weaver, Jessica Melvin, and I'm just sweeping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a couple knife wizards over here.
And Lamar is open, like, he's opened his house to me a few times, and I like, just so nice, man. Like, such a good person.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, he's just a bad dude. And I tell you what I like about Lamar is like, he's cool, but he's not like that dude. He's got his own style, like.
Oh yeah.
I saw Lamar like at competitions over there on the corner by himself, whipping everybody's ass, and nobody knows it.
Yep.
I always felt like,
And he ain't trying to tell you.
you don't gotta be this image. You can just be a regular dude and be good.
You're good, yeah.
So I'd say Lamar Weaver, that was 4. I'd have to mention Bodie. Bodie's huge, man. He's super. Bodie actually has always been the guy I looked for, because when I first came in, he'd made the team. I remember he was 23.
Yep.
And I told myself, if I could make the team at 23, I'm
something
getting
good.
it on. I did at 24, So, and then, I remember talking to him, he bought a house. And I was like, how old are you, dude? Yeah, and I would always keep that in my head, because it's like, I respect him so much, and I think he's successful. I was like, if you can do somewhat of what Bodie's doing, it's a good. You gotta have someone to look up to and to chase. Like Chris Madrid was too far for me to chase. He's like, he's a national champion. I'm just trying to make the shoeing at the convention. So I would say Bodie, and then, man, I think I'd have to throw in like guys like Dan Hausman. That I respect a lot of that guy that's out there shoeing six horses a day, and he's doing a great job, and he's paying his bills, and he's getting ahead in life, and at one point was maybe at Calgary or at convention, but is not right now.
Yeah.
So I'd say all of those guys and many
It's
more.
a strong list, dude.
Yeah.
That's a good one, man. Well thought out. Man, we appreciate you taking your time to go on and sit down with us, dude.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys so much, because with my long commute, I've listened to. I bet I could listen to Coons in one day. So, so I appreciate what you guys do, and it's great.
Let's hope your shoeing job plays pretty good tomorrow then.
Yeah, we'll see. Thank you guys.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody listening.